Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today we are taking a look at the Shadow Guardian. This is a Nightblade tank, and it is a very good Nightblade tank. It's not like the best Nightblade tank I could come up with, but it was one that when I just tinkering around and stuff that I was messing with, that it just wind up like after I worked with it, I finally got it down to what I feel is the best option. Now, Dark Elf might not be the best race for it, but it works really well because it does give you a little bit better resource management or resource pool when it comes to Magicka over like an Argonian. It definitely gives you better resources when it comes to stamina, so it kind of gives you a mix of all that. Now, like I said, it's not the best particular build in the world, but it works out really well in the long run. So let's go ahead and take a look at the stats. As you can see, 64 into stamina to give us a higher stamina pool for blocking and stuff. We have 20k in Magicka, 30k in health, 31 actually. And with Warhorn, all these get boosted up. The stamina goes up to about 30k. The health goes up to just under 35, I think it is. And then your weapon and spell damage isn't a big play on this one, but it is highly resourceful to use those because of how this build works. So we are running the Lord Mundustone because we are a Dark Elf. We don't get a high health pool, and being a Nightblade, you don't get a high health pool. So it's kind of like a combination of the two. We are in 5 pieces of heavy armor, so we'll get that in a second. We are running 5 Ebon, and of course we are running all primary stat food. But we are using the PTS food, so it's not the best food. It's like an okay food. So let's get into the gear. This is kind of a different setup than what most people are accustomed to because the gear is going to be different. We are running, on the monster set, we are running the Lord Warden. The reason I chose Lord Warden over the other gear sets is because this is a really group supportive monster set, in that it gives you resistances, but it also gives your group some extra resistances. Whenever you take damage, it drops a shadow orb that gives your whole group within 8 meters 3,870 extra resistances. That can be really helpful in a lot of the dungeons and stuff. This is more of a dungeon play build than it is a trial build. You could use it in trials, but honestly, I don't know how well it would work. I didn't get a time to test it in any trials. I only got to test it in a few dungeons. So, and it worked out really well there. So, really good set here, Lord Warden. You want tri-stats on all the 3 bigger pieces. And as you can see, we are running Night Mothers. Now, the reason I chose Night Mothers over Alkosh, like a lot of people usually choose Alkosh, the reason I chose Night Mothers is because of the way the build works. You get the extra critical, and whenever you deal critical damage, you reduce the enemy's physical resistance. This plays more for you than it does the group, but it's okay that it does that because you want to be able to get the extra damage in there, especially in a dungeon run. Having the extra penetration gives you that extra benefit, so it's kind of nice for the Nightblade. Now, Night Mothers doesn't work for every class when it comes to tanking, so with this particular build, though, it works really well. Moving on, of course, like I said, 5 pieces of Ebon, and this you have a permanent uptime of, so it's kind of, of course, the benefit of getting the extra 1,000 health for your allies and, anyone within, like 11 members within 28 meters. That's a huge radius to cover, so it's really nice to have that. Still will not say that it's the best set, but it is a really good set, particularly for this build. Moving on, 3 pieces of Ebon jewelry, and I am using a shield play on here for the reduced block cost and the reduced bashing cost, but we also get extra from our champion points, and we'll show that off here in a second. The next 2 are weapon damage, of course, because we want to increase our character's capabilities to do damage. In a dungeon setting, regardless of what a lot of people think, in a dungeon setting, it's a lot different than a trial setting. You can actually make your tank to do damage, and it actually helps to have a tank that does damage in a dungeon setting, because the more faster you can kill things, the better off the group is. Now, the tank is not going to be doing uber DPS, that's for sure, but we're talking about anywhere between 5 to 12k DPS, and that 5 or 12k does add up. 24% critical, spell critical with this build, and 33% physical critical plays on it as well because of the healing and stuff like that. So moving on down here, we are running 2 Nirnhone shields. I am running different shields so I can tell the difference of what I'm running. So when I switch bars, I know which bar I'm on. Because a lot of times I don't do that because I'm running opposite weapons or something. Or I might be running opposite like shield types or something. So it's just a way to tell the difference apart. But I am running 2 Nirnhone shields, both of them with tri-stack glyphs. Because tri-stack glyphs work really well on shields. I don't know why. Moving on again to the swords now. We are running dual swords on the front bar. They're both infused. One has crushing and one has hardening. Now the reason I went hardening on the back bar is because of that damage shield. And the fact that you will be able to apply that damage shield every 5 seconds. It doesn't matter. Every 5 seconds you can apply that damage shield. And that 4,000 will save your life a lot of the time. Trust me. I know. It's crazy. This, of course, is a given. A lot of tanks run the Crusher enchant for the extra physical and spell resistance pin to help out, to do damage. So this right here, the Crusher enchant, along with the Night Mothers, gives you roughly about another 5k penetration with your champion point setup. So you'll get a total of 10k penetration if you can maintain criticals. So, and it's not that you're trying to get criticals, it's just that greater penetration gives you greater damage capabilities. Like I said, for dungeon play, it's phenomenal. Solo play, it's really good too. So, yeah, but that's it for the gear. All the gear, like I said, all these pieces are infused. We are running 1 Nirnhone here, though. I want to point this out. We are running a Nirnhone belt because a sturdy belt just doesn't give you any resistances in light. So I went with the Nirnhone. And I am running the rest heavy and 1 medium in the helm. So the rest of it's sturdy, though, to get the extra block costs. Because this build, it does not use a lot of protection abilities like a lot of other tanks do. It uses the armor boosting ones that boost your resistances. But other than that, you have to block with this build. You have to block a lot of attacks. You don't have to block all of them, just a lot of them. Because you have other ways of mitigating damage with this build, which is well beyond a lot of other build setups. So let's go ahead and take a look at the skills. On the main bar, we are running Pierce Armor, of course. Everyone knows this. I was actually going to set it up for Ransack, but I decided against it because of the way the resistance values are. They're not far off, and if I was using Ransack, I would actually end up with more physical resistance over spell resistance, and I didn't want to do that. So let's go back in here and take a look at skills. Moving on, the next ability is Sap Essence. Now this is kind of like a sap tank. You do use this ability quite a bit for the heal to your group and the damage. It also gives you both, it bolsters your major brutality and major sorcery, so you're going to want to get this ability off as quick as you can so you get that 20% more weapon and spell damage. Spell damage for using this ability again, weapon damage for all your weapon abilities, and you have a few of them. Next up we have Echoing Vigor. Now, a lot of people are going to say, why didn't you use Resolving Vigor? Because this build, you have other heals, like coming in from Sap Essence and everything. This works out a lot better, and the heal is pretty big. So you get that good heal on your allies and yourself. And especially when you have 8% or 10% major mending, or mending or whatever from healing done, that really applies to this a lot. And on top of that, you get another 3%. So you have a 13% healing done. And then if you were an Argonian, you have 18%. So you know, like I said, this one, the Dark Elf, I chose it because of the benefits of the race. But other races can work with this build. Argonian would be good. You'd have a lot lower stamina pool, but that's fine. You can work with it. Next up, we have Absorb Magic. This is mainly here for the block cost, and the block cost, how much you can block, and the block cost reduction. That's why it's here, mainly. You can use it for the shield, which is good, you know, to like absorb one magic ability to heal yourself. It's another way to maintain some damage mitigation. Now, this is your main mitigation ability. It's going to be one of them. This gives you Minor Ward, Minor Resolve. This increases both spell and physical resistance. So you're going to be over the cap. I'm going to warn you now. You will go over the cap of resistances, but that's fine. Don't worry about it because of the Lord Warden's going to put you over the cap when that 3,000 buff goes off. But you want this up all the time. That 15% in dodging is crazy. Like it increases your dodge chance by 15%, and you want that major evasion up as much as you can. So this is going to be an ability you will be casting a lot. That's why we have the 20k Magicka, is so you have this up consistently. Next up is our ultimate, and I went with Bolstering Darkness on the front bar instead of Barrier like I do with my other builds, because this gives you 60% damage reduction, and that damage reduction stacks with all the other damage reduction. You can literally get like a 90% damage reduction to where you don't take anything. This will be the main ability you will use a lot more than Warhorn. And that's because of all the damage mitigation it's going to give you. It also reduces the movement speed of enemies who walk through it by 70%, and you can also have an ally synergize off of it, granting the, invisibility and increasing their movement speed by 50% and healing them for an absurd amount of health. So, really good ultimate ability, especially for a tank class. Moving on to the next bar, we are running Surprise Attack. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, you're running Pierce Armor, why are you running Surprise Attack? The main reason why we have Surprise Attack here is for the 3% extra health it gives us, but also the fact that when you're fighting trash, you don't really need to taunt. You just need to break their resistances. So putting this on there is actually a little cheaper than using taunt, I believe. Nope, actually taunt's a little cheaper. But you can still use this to apply that major fracture, and it does damage on top of it. And then on top of that, attacking from stealth or sneaking, you can use this and it'll stun enemies, it sets them off balance and all that kind of stuff. But it's just a really good ability. Now, if you want to change this out, I would suggest changing it out for Mass Hysteria or Dark Shadow. Mass Hysteria is the better option here because it does apply Minor Maim for 4 seconds. So this might be a better option to put on the bar, so you still maintain that 3% extra health. Next up is Heroic Slash, of course. Most tanks are these days are running this ability, but the reason I chose Heroic Slash is for the ultimate generation, because your ultimates are part of your build, like main source of your build, so you want that ultimate gen to make sure that you have that Bolstering Darkness or Warhorn available. Next up, we have Swallow Soul. Now, we have Swallow Soul here for the 8% healing received only. So that means any heals that your healer is applying to you, this is going to give you an 8% healing received. Other than that, you have 8% healing received from heavy armor and another 8% healing received from your champion points. And I'll get to that in a minute. So you have a really high healing received, and because of that, this helps you mitigate a lot more damage. Because any heals you receive is going to give you greater heals over time. So the more dot heals you have applied to you, the more damage you mitigate. That's why we run Vigor, that's why we use Sap Essence, and that's why we run Swallow Soul, is so you can sap the life out of them and heal for 28% of the damage inflicted every 2 seconds for 10 seconds. All that healing received, all the healing done, you just get a lot of extra health from it. So it's how this build works is it plays off of healing done, and you spend a lot more time on the back bar than you do the front bar. You're going to cast from the front bar, switch to the back bar. On the back bar, we also have Immovable Brute. Now, a lot of people would probably go with the other one, but the reason I chose this one is because while slotted, each piece of heavy armor worn decreases the cost of break free by 4%. So not only do you get 20% from champion points, you get another 20% from this. Your break free costs are 40% cheaper for 23 seconds. So I like this a lot more because of it. Because being a tank, you do get stunned. You do get knocked down sometimes. And having that ability to break free at a cheaper cost saves you resources. Next up is our ranged taunt. This is Inner Rage. This allows you to basically taunt enemies at a distance and get them to come to you. This is pretty much like standard in most meta tanks and stuff, but for this build, this works out really well because you can use all these skills on this bar without even switching to the front bar if you want to. So you get some benefit here as you do on the front bar. So both ways are good, but it's up to you to decide on what bar you're going to spend most of your time on. Last but not least, Aggressive Warhorn. Everyone knows what this does. Max Magicka, Max Health, Max Stamina by 10%, and also gives the group Major Force. That Max Health, Max Magicka, Max Stamina is for the group, along with the Major Force. Has a 20-meter range, so it's a big area of coverage, and you just get a lot of extra stuff out of it. When you use Warhorn, this is when you start going damage. Whenever you fire Warhorn off is when you want to do damage, and you want to get that benefit of those critical damage. And that is the skills. So let's go ahead and take a look at champion points, and then I'll show you a little bit in play. So starting with the red trait, we have 23 in the Ironclad. This gives us 10% damage reduction. Because of that other one, like I said, remember, you can have up to like 30% from it or 60% from it. That's why Bolstering Darkness, you're going to want to use it a lot, is to get that extra in there. Next up, I put 25 into Spell Shield to give me 2,310 extra resistances. You really don't need this, to be honest, but I wanted the extra survivability from the resistances. You could put this into Ironclad to give you more, you know, here, and you could probably put more from the Heavy Armor. We'll get to that in a second, too. Next up, 23 into Thick Skin. This gives you 10% reduced damage taken from damage over time. 43 into Hardy, 43 in Elemental Defender, both of these reducing damage from pretty much all types of damage by 10%. Next up, we have 16 Expert Defender. This reduces damage taken from light and heavy attacks by 10%. Now, you guys are going to notice something different about this, because most tanks will put into Bastion. I did not. And that's because this build plays off of survivability and heals over time. It doesn't use damage shields to mitigate damage, it uses heals to mitigate damage. So, the next place we put points is 32 points into Quick Recovery. This gives us an 8% increased healing received, along with the 8% we get from wearing heavy armor from Rapid Mending passive. We get 16%, and then with that other 8, we get 24% healing received. And that's why we have our build set up the way we do. Next up, we have Heavy Armor Focus. We have 25 points. Again, you don't need these here. You can put in, like, if you wanted to take the 25 out of both, you could max this out and take the remaining points and put it into here, or put it into both of these kind of things. But you definitely want this 32 here for the healing received. Moving on, 23 into Warlord. This gives us 10% break free cost. Okay, 10%, not 20. So we get a 30% break free cost. That saves us a lot of resources. And that's why I chose a movable over the class's own buff to resistances, because it doesn't last long enough. So this works out better in the long run. Next up, we have 16 into Bash Focus. That's why we also have that bashing cost reduction thing, is we want to put points into here too. So that actually gives us a lot cheaper bashing to interrupt enemies, knock enemies off balance, stop them from doing certain abilities. Next up, we have 43 into Mooncalf, 43 in Arcanus, and 43 in Snaxy. This gives us Stamina Recovery, 10%. This gives us 10% in Magic Recovery. And since we're a Nightblade, we get 15% in all three, Magicka, Stamina, and Health. With this, we get 25 in Magicka and 25% in Health or Stamina Recovery. And being a Dark Elf, you get no recovery values whatsoever. So I kind of thought this would be the better option, the better choice for it. Next up, we have Tenacity of course. Anytime you do a heavy attack, it returns a resource. This will return stamina to you by 10%. So you get 10% more added on with not rapid mending, whatever it is, the new passive that does the same thing that rapid mending did. For the Magicka recovery, stamina recovery from heavy attacks, you get 55% in the wrong, 65 is it? 75? I don't know. You get a lot. You get 30% from one, 25% from another, so 65% in total. Over here we have 56 into Shadow Ward. This reduces our block cost by 20%, and 6 in Befoul. Now, I didn't know where else to put these 6 points, so I put them here, and that's in case you want to use Reverberating Bash to defile enemies or whatever, if you want to. Next up, we have 43 into Blessed. This gives us 10% healing done. So remember, we get 24% healing received with 10% healing done. That's a lot of healing that we get for ourselves, and that's how we mitigate a lot of our damage. Moving on, we have 35 into Physical Weapon Expert, 56 into Master at Arms, 23 into Shattering Blows. As you can see, this is 20%, 20%, and that's going to boost our light and heavy attack damage. That's going to really help us out, especially with that's where we're going to be doing most of our damage from, is light and heavy attacks. Next up, Shattering Blows. This increases our damage done against damage shields by 10%. Over here, we have 43 into Mighty, 23 into Precise Strikes. And the reason I went 23 into here is because you don't need a lot of critical healing, but if you can get some, that's going to be better for you. So this is going to apply it on that. But here's the other thing you need to know about a Nightblade. Nightblades get extra critical anyways. They get Assassin Mastery. Increases your weapon and spell damage by 10% while you're sneaking, but, or not that one. Is it Executioner? This one. Increases weapon and spell critical rating for each assassination ability on your bar. All your heals are here with an assassination ability. So you get 438 extra critical here to increase your healing capabilities. And possibly give you more, because you also get this. Increases your critical damage done by 10%. This applies to heals too. So dealing critical damage grants your group minor savagery, increasing weapon criticals by 657. This will also increase that again. So increase your healing done also by a small amount. Now, I don't know why certain things, like they need to specify or let us know that this does that, because it's really important that we know. Because it works the same way on the Templar as it does here. So going back in the champion points, so 23 into Precise Strikes, 7 into Piercing. And the reason we went 7 into Piercing is to give us that little bit of boost to put us over the 10k cap on penetration. So we actually get that 10k. Next up, we have 43 into Mighty. And that's it. 10% extra damage, which stacks with these two over here, giving us 50%. So that is the Shadow Guardian build, guys. And I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a little bit of this in action so you guys can see for yourselves. I need to go to this bar real quick because I'm going to buff up with my immovable. I'm going to go ahead and hit one of these guys with that. Taunt, Sap Essence, Vigor, and then I'm going to pop this because in case this Magicka guy comes, you know, this guy's doing Magicka damage on me, and it'll give me another heal. As I said, most of the damage you take, you can pretty much mitigate with heals. So it's a really, really good setup, and this right here does a lot of healing. That does a decent amount of healing, and as you can see, I'm not even really using a lot of resources because I do get a decent amount of them back, just not really fast. So this is why you're going to be doing a lot of blocking, bashing, Sap Essence, you know, low attack, that kind of thing, like low slash or even that. So you can do that. So like this, and then low slash. And then heavy attack, so you can get your resources back. But like I said, it's all about managing your resources, managing your damage. So you want to do both. And the reason why you want to do damage, especially in a dungeon situation, is because there's not a lot of dungeons that require you to do this a lot. Like literally, there is none that require you to do this a lot. A lot of dungeons only require you to block certain attacks. And most of the attacks, even if you block, you can move out of them. So... but that is the Shadow Guardian build, guys. I hope that you guys like it. I love this build. I personally am thinking about making my Nightblade, Argonian Nightblade, into this build because it works so well. And I do have the Lord Warden set already, and it wouldn't be hard for me to get this put together. But I would probably honestly change out the 2 gear sets for Assassin's Guile and the... I can't think of what it is. It's the one from the Dark Brotherhood set. But it's like, does max health twice, and then it does spell and weapon critical, and then the final one is the Blade of Woe. My Argonian is a Dark Brotherhood character, so I figured like incorporating those 2 things together would be really cool for the build. And if you guys are wondering what armor this is actually the Dark Brotherhood. I think this is either from the Dark Brotherhood or the Assassin's armor. The shield is from the Assassin's armor, the sword is Assassin's. The boots and gloves, of course, are Ebon, and then the shoulder is from that. That's why this looks... I like the way it looks. It just looks really cool. So, But let me know in the comments below what you guys think. If you guys have a Nightblade build that you want to turn into a tank, this is a great option, especially for small, like I said, dungeon play. It's really good. Not so good in trials. It would probably work in vet trial or normal trials, but probably not a lot of the vet trials. But you could play through the normal trials, especially the new trial. You could definitely play through that on normal, as long as you're taking out all 3 bosses separately. This would be a good like off tank for that. But yeah, it's a really fun build. Check it out. Let me know what you guys think. Other than that, yeah, there's not a whole lot more to say. So if you guys like this video, hit that like button. If you guys want to see more builds by me, you can hit the subscribe button. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy, we'll see you all later. Bye.